Chapter 5 of Plunkitt of Tammany Hall, a series of very plain talks on very practical politics. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Mike Vendetti. Plunkitt of Tammany Hall, a series of very plain talks on very practical politics by George Washington Plunkitt. Chapter 5. New York City is pie for the Hayseeds. This city is ruled entirely by the hayseed legislators at Albany. I've never known an upstate Republican who didn't want to run things here, and I've met many thousands of them in my long service in the legislature. The hayseeds think we are like the Indians to the national government, that is, sort of wards of the state who don't know how to look after ourselves and have to be taken care of by the Republicans of St. Lawrence, Ontario, and other backwoods counties. Why should anybody be surprised because ex-Governor Odell comes down here to direct the Republican machine? Newburgh ain't big enough for him. He, like all the other upstate Republicans, wants to get hold of New York City. New York is their pie. Say you hear a lot about the downtrodden people of Ireland and the Russian peasants and the sufferin' Boers. Now, let me tell you that they have more real freedom and home rule than the people of this grand and imperial city. In England, for example, they make a pretense of givin' the Irish some self-government. In this state, the Republican government makes no pretense at all. It says right out in the open, New York City is a nice, big, fat goose. Come along with your carving knives and have a slice. They don't pretend to ask the goose's consent. We don't own our streets or our docks or our waterfront or anything else. The Republican legislature and governor run the whole shooting match. We've got to eat and drink what they tell us to eat and drink, and have got to choose our time for eatin' and drinkin' to suit them. If they don't feel like taking a glass of beer on Sunday, we must abstain. If they have not got any amusements up in their backwoods, we mustn't have none. We've got to regulate our whole lives to suit them, and then we have to pay their taxes to boot. Did you ever go up to Albany from this city with a delegation that wanted anything from the legislature? No? Well, don't. The hayseeds who run the committees will look at you as if you were a child that didn't know what it wanted, and will tell you in so many words to go home and be good, and the legislature will give you whatever it thinks is good for you. They put on a sort of patronizing air, as much as to say, these children are an awful lot of trouble. They're wanting candy all the time, and they know that it will make them sick. They ought to thank goodness that they have us to take care of them. And if you try to argue with them, they'll smile in a pitying sort of way as if they were humoring a spoiled child. But just let a Republican farmer from Chimburg or Wayne or Tioga turn up at the Capitol, the Republican legislature will make a rush for him and ask him what he wants, and tell him if he doesn't see what he wants to ask for it. If he says his taxes are too high, they reply to him, all right, old man, don't let that worry you. How much do you want us to take off? I guess about 50% will about do for the present, says the man. Can you fix me up? Sure, the legislature agrees. Give us something. Harder, don't be bashful. We'll take off 60% if you wish. That's what we're here for. Then the legislature goes and passes a law increasing the liquor tax or some other tax in New York City, takes a half of the proceeds for the state treasury, and cuts down the farmers' taxes to suit. It's as easy as rolling off a log when you've got a good working majority and no conscience to speak of. Let me give you another example. It makes me hot under the collar to tell you about this. Last year, some hayseeds along the Hudson River, mostly in Odell's neighborhood, got dissatisfied with the docks where they landed their vegetables, brickbats and other things they produce in the river counties. They got together and said, let's take a trip down to New York and pick out the finest dock we can find. Odell and the legislature will do the rest. They did come down here, and what do you think they hit on? The finest doc in my district invaded George W. Plunkitt's district without saying as much as, "By your leave." Then they called on Odell to put through a bill givin' them this dock, and he did. When the bill came before Mayor Low, I made the greatest speech of my life. I pointed out how the legislature could give the whole waterfront to the Hayseeds over the head of the dock commissioner in the same way, and warned the mayor that nations had rebelled against their governments for less. But it was no go. Odell and Low were pards, and, well, my dock was stolen. You heard a lot in the Senate campaign about Odell's great work in reducin' the state tax to almost nothin', and you'll hear a lot more about it in the campaign next year. How did he do it? By cuttin' down the expenses of the state government? Oh, no. The expenses went up. He simply performed the old Republican act of milkin' New York City. The only difference was that he nearly milked the city dry. He not only ran up the liquor tax, but put all sorts of taxes on corporations, banks, insurance companies, and everything in sight that could be made to give up. Of course, nearly the whole tax fell on the city. Then Odell went through the country districts and said, "See what I have done for you. You ain't got any more taxes to pay the state. Ain't I a fine feller?" Once a farmer in Orange County asked him, "How did you do it, Ben?" "Dead easy," he answered. "Whenever I want any money for the state treasury, I know where to get it." And he pointed towards New York City. And then all the Republican tinkerin' with New York City's charter. Nobody can keep up with it. When a Republican mayor is in, they give him all sorts of power. If a Tammany mayor is elected next fall, I wouldn't be surprised if they changed the whole business and arranged it so that every city department should have 4 heads, 2 of them Republicans. If we make a kick, they would say, "You don't know what's good for you. Leave it to us. It's our business." End of chapter 5.